kick-ass sequel that was nothing at all like the first one. It was like Army versus the Aliens, and it was just another fantastic movie. Probably my two favorite science fiction movies, so it's a personal thrill for me to be able to introduce from the film Alien, Veronica Cartwright. You're stuck next to me. And next, the captain of the Nostromo. Please welcome Tom Skerritt. It's been a weekend.
Hi, y'all.
Next, from the film Aliens, we have Mark Rolston.
Oh, come on.
Okay, next up we have Jennette Goldstein. Next we have Carrie Henn. Is there another?
Yeah, we're sure the man.
We have it down. And last but not least, a return performance by my good friend, Lance Henriksen. You probably get more things from it if I duck with.
I love my friend. Why are you guys still here? Chardonnay is the answer.
Difficult answer.
How you doing, Lance? I know you missed me, Lance.
I
know you
love
missed me.
what?
I know you missed me.
I love a crowd like this because we've all been through a lot together, all of us.
Okay, so what we'll do, like we did with what we started to do with the last Q&A, if you have a question, raise your hand, and we'll call on you, and we'll go from there. So who has the first alien or aliens question?
That takes a lot of balls.
I
Come
think
on.
that was just a...
You guys do it.
Oh,
Okay, we'll go right here.
Hey.
Do any of you actually believe in aliens?
So the question is, do any of the panel actually believe in aliens?
Absolutely.
You kidding?
And then they all look like Jeff
Have you
Bridges
seen the
and Starman.
internet? It's full of shit. No, really, yeah, I believe in aliens. I think it would, these guys, they just made us so vulnerable, man. I'm a kind guy. I talk to my girlfriend. You know what I mean? I don't like the internet. It's a piece of shit, really, in every way. Do you mind me saying that?
Oh, you can say anything you want, man. All right, who else has?
Thank you for asking. What's your name?
Sam.
What?
Sam.
Sam. But do you work for, the internet? I'm just asking. You look good, you feel good, it shows.
Okay, who else had a question? Right here.
Okay, so there's two separate movies. Who in the cast of Alien 1, what role would you want to play in Alien 2? Sorry, Alien X, and vice versa.
Okay, so the question to the panel is, what if they were to transpose movies, basically?
Yes.
What role would the people that were in Alien want to play in the film Aliens and vice versa?
Well, obviously, I would have rather not died in the first one. But Jennette's character is kind of ballsy. I like her.
I mean, I think if I was gonna pick one from Alien, the obvious choice would be Ripley because she lived and it was pretty amazing. So. No offense. Was it?
That's all right. I was the only wise one on that ship anyway. Nobody looked at me.
I think I'd like to, would have been Yaphet Kotto's part. I thought he was really funny.
Oh, and Bill Paxton.
Yeah.
That's true. You guys are trippy. They are trippy, man. They're here to ask, what was it like to have lived, died, and back again? That's what's going on, right? We've been in outer space, we're back. Do you trust what's going on with NASA right now? Are you kidding? They're talking shit in every direction. We have a new telegraph, we got a new, never mind. I'm sorry. You know, I just think we're very lucky to have each other. That's what I see. I don't see my desire to go to Mars. Are you fucking kidding me? It's a piece of shit. It's a drive worse than Death Valley. I mean, come on, man. Be real. Right? Do you want to go to Mars? How about you? You're so young. You want to go to Mars?
Me?
What? What was that?
I have no idea.
Where did that come from? Where are you? What? Are you a Martian? Are you working in that direction? Okay. All right.
Who else has a question? Right here. So the question to the panel is, was in making the film that they were in, was there any scene that was either very impressionable to them or was frightening for them, like kind of stuck in their memory after filming it or during filming it?
Okay, well, Tom and I walked across the desert in some moon boots, about 50 pounds on our backs and helmets on our head, CO2 canisters, and they hadn't given us any air holes to breathe. And I think we all passed out at one point, so that was very impressionable. And we had to carry John Hurt, Tom and I, because Ridley felt it wouldn't be a good physical thing to be carrying a dummy. So we literally carried John Hurt across that desert, which was the largest soundstage in Europe. So, yeah, that was impressionable. Go, Tom. What was your...
Oh, man.
Well, I don't think about these things too often. I just move from one thing to another, but as I write, so when I'm not doing what I do for a living, I've got other things to do. But as far as that film is concerned, I remember getting the script, most of all. In the first place, I was doing some other film, and I get this script, and it says Alien, and $2 million budget. There's no director. There's nobody else involved in it. I'm going, well, I don't understand this. What is this about? So anyway, I told the producer, let me put a hold on that. So he says, you gotta come over and see this film, which I saw a film called, excuse me, I've been drinking too much water. You know that stuff is, it really chokes you up if you drink too much water. Right?
Oh.
Yes, anyway. So.
The Duelist.
The Duelist. Anyway, I see this film that he screens I see the deal is, I said, I gotta work for whoever directed this film, I gotta watch. I gotta be involved in it. I wanna watch this guy work, which was Ridley, who was actually a graphics designer coming up at that point. And they raised the budget, and he was gonna do it, and I heard these people were involved. A wonderful crew, and here we are, remember sitting down. I don't mean to go on about visions in particular. I like the stuff around films rather than specific to a scene. So here we are, the crew's gonna read through, which we always do before you shoot a film. And lo and behold, just as we start, we get 2 pages into it, and Ridley starts telling us, okay, this is the platform. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Just like you guys. It took me a minute to read, he's talking about less is more. In that film, you never see the bad guy. You only get the hint of it. You can see where it's going to lead up to. You rarely see this guy until you suddenly hear him get a chainsaw go on and you know, oh my God. So that was the look of the film. The original Alien was less is more. And that was, when you think about those things you're anticipating and you don't show up, it gets worse. So that's where we were led into worse, all of us as an audience, is how I'm looking at this. I'm always talking about this as an audience looking at this film. And then he gets somebody, comes in and says, you gotta go do some work on the studio, on the stage, and he leaves and he says, see ya, that was it. That's never gonna read through. And I thought, well, I'm the captain of the ship, I should have something to round this all up and make sense of nothing that happened. And I said, well, and I forgot how I put it, it was something like, well, we're going to be the ingredients and the seasoning of a very interesting film. And that was it. And that's what we got.
You guys are so spellbound by all of this. Incredible, man. It's like buying a French poodle, a French dog. You know, the little fat one that makes faces. Anyway, when you think about what they went through to create what those guys wanted to do, it was great. When I saw those movies, I could smell it. I could smell the people. I was terrified. And then I got, okay, calm down. It's gonna be all right. But it was an amazing, amazing movie. It was an environment that you couldn't escape. It was amazing in every way. And then suddenly, Jim Cameron decided to do one. And that was like, holy shit, what now what's gonna happen? And I think it was almost like that kind of element to it. What is gonna second one and the third one and go on. And I felt like a prisoner of that. Why are you guys leaving? Anyway, yeah, what? They're coming forward?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hey, put your ice cream down. Yeah. This is serious shit. Anyway, all right. I have loved science fiction since when you saw these certain old, what?
Close Encounters.
Say that again?
Close Encounters, the third kind.
Close Encounters. Come on, man. Close Encounters was like sterile compared to what was going on with these movies. These were like you could die. Close Encounters, you could get a
Final mashed potatoes.
yeah, you get like mashed potatoes. I don't. What did you just say?
That's a scene in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, Come on, we're all very sophisticated now. We've been to fucking the moon, and now we landed on Mars, and we have cynicism that is so dark and so so stupid. You know, I mean, I saw, you know, come into this cave. What cave? We're 5 billion miles away from it, and you telling me that's a cave? That ain't a cave, and we're not going there. And we don't have enough water to get us there. You know, I mean, come on. And now with our imagination, the incredible ability for imagination, don't hold your nose, it ain't gonna fall off. Don't worry about it. We are built to have imagination and to move forward. Gordon Cooper was a friend of mine because I did the right stuff. And we flew across the country together. And, I mean, I'll go on for a long time. You want? I know, I'm going to give it up.
Maybe we should move on.
I'm giving it up.
So I have a question.
Now have your entire
I spent a lot of time being terrified of being bad or being like, it's not terrible, most actors do that anyway, right? Most of the time, trying to keep your mind. But James Cameron had a lot of confidence in me. I mean, he was just like, you know, you're the one, you know what you're doing, you know, you're Vasquez. And it was his confidence in, you know, my portrayal of this woman that really helped me do it. And boy, was those guns heavy. Just trying to stay upright. A lot of times there was this one point where we were kind of doing that sort of like dance sort of thing, and I know like one reviewer said it's amazing. It was like she was like a flamenco dancer or something. The way she like leaned back and I was like, you had to lean back, or that thing would like shoot you forward. It was like just keeping your you know, the balance, keeping your center. So it was a great experience.
Hey, Jennette, back in those days,
Yeah.
looked like Davis, you know, the boxer. Javante Davis. You could kick ass.
I was pretty tough. I had 2 years before I had just kind of started bodybuilding, lifting weights. I was a gymnast when I was a little girl, and so I was always interested in doing stuff like that. So I had just for 2 years straight, that was kind of my thing that I did while I was auditioning, you know, for plays and things, and it just kind of coincided with like I was in the best shape of my life, which I've ever been in the film. So
We saw that.
Yeah.
Well, then you worked again with Mark and Lance in Near Dark.
In Your Dark, yeah. That was great.
The love of my life in Near Dark. Oh my
Yes.
God.
For eternity.
Yes, for eternity.
You got it.
And we didn't like Lost Balls very much. It's Lost Boys.
The Lost Boys.
Did I say balls or boys? but we had created a family with Bill Paxton and everybody. We were.
Yeah, it was like, you know, you spend that much time with each other, and then after the film, you know, we would hang out, and you have a sort of a language, and
Right.
you know, with each other. So it made a lot of sense that, you know, you skipped over so much that we already had that relationship. So I think it really worked.
Right. We hated the daylight. We used to go to at the end of a night shooting. We'd go to a truck stop right across from our motel. And when we walked in, we still had the makeup on. So we looked like we were bloody and up and everything else. And the minute we walked in, the truck drivers all left. And I thought that was only rightly so. Life is funny, man. I mean, it's like, we are very funny people. We are. We got imaginations. We're good. We want to get married. We want to whatever.
Want to go to Mars?
Never mind.
How about for you, Mark?
What?
Was there
What
any?
did I say?
Mark, was there any scenes that really stuck with you?
No real scenes, but the thing that really impressed me most was kind of intimidating when I walked into the office to meet Jim and Gail when they were tell me I got the part. I've always been blown away by all the storyboards that Jim did, and they were plastered in sequence around all four walls of his office. And he's a really fine artist, you know, so it was really just intimidating and sort of inspiring. So, but yeah, I was never afraid of aliens. I was Drake.
The flamethrower you're afraid of.
Yeah.
As you should be.
I did whip out on the flamethrower the first take when I was doing my death scene. You know, Jim had said, hey, fire the flamethrower. I mean, it was a real live one that went about 30 yards, right? But as I was turning, something went quickly through my brain. I was like, oh no, you're gonna fire this at the director. And I kind of went slightly above this plexiglass. And then the second take, Jim was like, fire right at me, right down the pipe. I got it the second time.
Okay, question right here.
So Aliens is an amazing, stellar film, and as far as I know, I don't know any movie before this, but at the end of the movie, it's two women are standing, Ripley and between the alien
Right.
two, and at the same time, your character is this kick-ass machine, and James Cameron later on brings Sarah Connor and where keeps that street going. So as far as I know, he's kind of the guy that helped push moving forward. I'm just kind of curious, do you have any big advice or some big rocking speech he gave you to get you into character?
No, you know, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, the film, I mean, well, start with first Alien, I mean, and then Aliens it's a film about mothers and daughters. The whole film, you know, in the end you got these two mothers fighting fiercely for their offspring, and it's great. It's incredible, and you know, it comes from the writing. It just comes from the writing. There's no kind of like pandering. I hate those kind of things like, oh, she's a big strong lady and she's gonna go out there and be like there's just none of that. It all just makes sense, and the writing I just think is so good, and you know. Casting's not bad, and all this films.
Honestly, the casting was great, and like you said, like each individual character, the actors became those characters, and even though they were all part of the same group, they were each so individual.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's hard to know, because when I was a little girl, when I was Carrie's age, and I was a tomboy, whatever that means. I mean, I just kind of wanted to run around and kick a ball and do stuff. And like all the 10 people I wanted to play, all were boys and men. I mean, I didn't kind of go, ooh, but I was just like, well, why would I want to be her? It was always I was being a guy. And the film is great because I love that it's the young girl who's saving the day. And I get me a kick when I hear men come up to me and they go, you know, when I was 10 and 12, me and my brother I'd play you, and I was like, yeah, turn around, it's fair play now.
Okay, over here. Favorite scenes of film? All right, we'll start with the Alien group. I think I know what yours was.
My favorite scene to film? What? Food?
I was thinking the chest burster. I mean, when that happens,
Wow.
it looks like such. I don't know whether you were expecting for that to.
Well, it was interesting because I think Tom went downstairs, but we were all upstairs in the dressing room for about 4 hours while they dressed John. And John had this false chest that was stuffed with awful, lovely kidneys and all sorts of things. And so when we were brought down to the set, the entire set was in plastic. There were 4 cameras so that they could get all of the reactions. Big buckets of offal and soaking in formaldehyde, so when you sort of walked on the set, you sort of got an impression that this wasn't going to be very healthy. So what was fascinating about it was that even though you'd read it in a script, and Sigourney and I had seen the little penis guy as a puppet because we had to do a scene after it. And you should have seen these prop guys that were so, it's so wonderful. And it's going to breathe, and it's going to have teeth go in and out. And we're like looking at this sort of thing. That's very, but at least we knew what we were talking about. So here's John in this thing, and we shoot the first time, and then and you see it start to come up, and then Ridley, I got a hair or something. Ridley goes cut, wait, and then they cut the chest a little bit more, and we're like all standing around. The anticipation was so intense, and so then they start to do the scene again, and it starts to come, and I was so fascinated, I leaned right into a blood jet, which hit me square in the face. And it was like the Marx Brothers or something. I went bum, bum, bum. My knees hit the back of that baghead, and I flipped upside down. And there were 2 cowboy boots, and I thought, oh, shit, they're still filming. So I flip over, and I'm running back around. I mean, somewhere along the line, it's in one of somebody even said they just saw it the other day in the Blu-ray that's just come out. It was hysterical when we went and saw the dailies. All of a sudden, there I am, and then I just disappeared. It's like, and that, oh my God, was actually my reaction. It was for real. God. Years later, I worked with that same special effects guy on a show, and he goes, I was the one who the blood jet you leaned into. Well, thank you for sharing. But it was just raw and there. So it was pretty fascinating. It was not an easy shoot. It was tough, but we survived.
You almost did.
No, you almost did. Oh, jeez. Well, that desert scene we were talking about, they had forgotten to give us any air holes, and we dragged John across, and we were sweating profusely inside of these helmets, and we had to get on a forklift that took us up to the top where the ship is, and I started to faint. And here's Tom, and we had hockey gloves that had been painted so they weren't flexible, and I'm going like this, and Tom's going, and we're yelling, he's yelling, but nobody could hear us. They'd forgotten to give us mics. It was incredible. I'm like, here's Tom trying to hang on to me, and we've got helmets on, and it was bizarre. I mean, I think we almost died several times on that film. Anyway, yeah, so.
That was yours.
Yeah. What's yours, Tom?
Oh, no. I never like to pick out any particular favorite, except I like to watch the directors do their work. And Ridley Scott, right off the bat, was the guy I was going to follow. And then to have this extraordinary group, the cast, were some of the best. 4 of them are gone now, unfortunately. But there were things I like to watch that go on around it, the people who are watching or being involved in, and this is really what was interesting for me, was I got there late one day, right at lunch, was the group of people were coming out of the auditorium to go and have lunch. So the gentleman from Nigeria, who was 7'1", who was wearing the suit, comes walking out with the wardrobe lady who was 5 feet tall. So the two of them are talking about British economy or politics. And I'm following this. I couldn't get away from it. I was just getting out of my vehicle. I didn't have one of these remarkable things, shooting and stuff. I'm listening to this conversation going on. And suddenly I'm aware of this guy's wearing Adidas bright blue tennis shoes with his whole avalanche of clothing, a monster. And his head is off, and he's just talking about the British economy. It was an aeronautical engineer that they found in a bar. This is this guy, lovely guy. I just thought that whole irony of this thing. And the other thing was, if I may add this one, is the scene coming there again I'm arriving on the scene to watch what's going on. I like to watch Ridley do his work. And there's a couple of English crew members in front of me, and one of the actors, unfortunately, was no longer here, but at the time, he loved to go, when he was going to go in doing a scene, he liked to work himself out, as often method actors like to get the blood going before they go in. So he's yelling at the English gentleman in front of us, saying, "You sons of bitches, you just walk around and yell, and you don't yell, and you don't do anything, you're polite. You're fed up with your niceness." And he walks off, because he had a tough scene to do. He walks off, and the two guys in front of him, one looks at the other, and says, "Isn't it grand being English?" I know they're all being bad, but that's the way I look at it all, is what we're all doing around this is often more interesting than what we're doing. And that's really, I think, a curve that we all must step up on, for all of us to look around at this world around us, to absorb how we're all looking at one another. And that's the way I see making movies, is, it's a big responsibility.
Actually, Tom came to Balaji's rescue because nobody had thought of how he was going to sit down once he got in this tail and outfit. And it was Tom who came up with the idea that he needed a swing. And so they made a special swing for him so that it could go under his tail and he could sit there, and he'd sit there with these massive white or blue tennis shoes, and he had his head off, but that was Tom. He was the savior of the alien. Nobody even thought of it. I mean, it's great.
How about for you, Carrie?
So my favorite scene probably didn't necessarily have to do with the scene, I mean, kind of, but it would be at the very end where, unfortunately, Lance has his demise where he's cut in half and all that kind of fun stuff. Everything happens, and then I get pulled across the floor, but then Lance saves the day and he saves me. The exciting part about that for me was on another set, they were actually doing some other filming that aliens were flying around, and so the harness that they were using for me to pull me across the ground was actually the same harness that they used for flying. So they told me that as soon as we were finished, James said, "You can go over to that other scene," and they let me fly around like Superman for
Oh, wow.
ages.
That's so cool.
So for me, that was, I mean, it was great. It was a really good scene, and it still kind of brings tears to my eyes whenever I watch it. But that is why that would probably, that or the slide would probably be. But I mean, it's coming from a kid, so.
Was that in Pinehurst?
Sorry?
Was that in Pinehurst?
Pinewood.
Or Pinewood?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were at Shepperton.
Yeah. It's sort of like the Hammer film before that, some of those were made. How about for you, Jennette?
What was the question?
Any scene that you particularly enjoy filming?
Mark?
Yeah, the longest day of filming for me, and perhaps the most enjoyable only because of Sigourney, was the day when we arrived and we all come out of the hypersleep. So you have to understand, like, everything about this movie was practically done. So what would have been hydraulics, the way the beds lifted, the lids lifted, that was all a bunch of dudes with cables and pulleys, like, trying to time out between themselves, and Jim was getting really pissed off because one would come up and the other would shake and fall down. It was really bad, but it was the longest day because Jim didn't want to let any of us get up in between the setups because we'd just be wasting time getting back in. So I was sitting next to Sigourney, and it got to the point where, in between these hopeless attempts to raise the lids, we kind of went to sleep, and then we woke up and nothing was still happening. And then Sigourney finally said to me, she said, "Hey, Drake, you know what?" And I said, "No, what Sigourney?" She goes, "I'm not very hairy here." But down here, and I went, "Ooh." I'm pale-skinned anyway, but I was beet red, and she started laughing. Oh, I can't believe I got you! But that's Sigourney. I'm telling you, probably the classiest woman or actress I've ever had the pleasure of filming with, and great sense of humor, and she's a real sort of a captain for the crew, and made sure that we were safe. Like when the APC crashed into the side of the wall of this power plant and almost took out Jim and the DP because the APC brakes stopped working. Sigourney stopped shooting for all this, because when the thing hit the wall, suddenly asbestos came twinkling down from the ceiling. And Sigourney stopped the shooting. They had hazmat teams come out with their counters or whatever. They proclaimed everything was okay, and we all looked at each other going, really? So, yeah, Sigourney's fun. I thought that was a really, not scary, but funny moment.
And that's you, Lance? Favorite scene filming in any of the Aliens films?
My favorite scene was when Jim said to me, "Are you claustrophobic at all?" And I said, "I don't know. Maybe, I don't know." And he said, "Okay, you gotta crawl through this pipe."
Right.
Like, you know, on your hands and knees. And I went, "Oh, I don't feel scared about it. Just go, let's try it." And sure enough, holy shit. It was like I'm scuttling along like some kind of an animal on my elbows and knees. And I thought, if I make it to the other end, I'm gonna still have a job. You know, which was good. But it was hard. It was like a 100-foot pipe that was making me pinch my shoulders together. And then I realized Jim would do anything to get a shot and even kill me. and not because he's mean. He's because I want to test you so that you can. I mean, there was more than one. There were more than one. And they put me in a pipe and welded it behind me.
I welded it, right?
Sparkle.
Oh yeah, I learned how to weld.
Yeah, you remember that?
Not only a job,
Yeah,
it was a career.
they were being sympathetic toward me, but it was like,
I welded without the shield and the,
yeah, and I have to go.
Yeah.
I gotta make it all the way to the end. It's okay, man. I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime movie, and you end up going, all right, this is my training bra. You know, I got more movies to do. I was young and, you know, ready to go. There you go. That's it. That's my answer. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Good.
All right, guys, we're coming close to the end. We'll take another question or two. Let's get you. Yeah.
I have a question for Carrie. How do you feel about Alien 3 today? And would you go back to change anything?
Alien 3, like putting ourselves in it.
Well,
Sorry, I've never seen Alien 3, so I'm just asking.
what?
I said I've never seen Alien 3, so I was wondering what happened. They killed
Yes, so they killed me. But there was technically a part that had me in it. And I get a lot of, it didn't look like you. Well, when we filmed Aliens, I was 9. And when Alien 3 came out, I was like a sophomore in high school. So if you think of a 9-year-old girl, and you think of like a sophomore girl, very different body types, right? So obviously I wasn't actually in it. I mean, to be honest with you, it is what it is. It's Hollywood, you never really know what's going to happen. James Cameron had kind of set up what he had envisioned, which I think was obviously something that the audience picked up on, because that seems to be what everybody had envisioned for what would happen in Alien 3. But I mean, I can't complain. Sigourney was the one that broke it to me. I mean, how many people can say Sigourney told them they weren't going to be in a movie, right? I mean, so there was some cool perks. She sent me some pretty cool things, and then She actually made sure that I was at the premiere of Alien 3, which when I went to the premiere of Aliens, I truthfully had no clue who anyone was there. I didn't know any of the stars or anything like that because I was just a little 9-year-old who moved from England. I only knew the people I'd been in the movie with and was excited to see them because it'd been a while since they had left the set.
You were wearing a very pretty dress at the premiere, I remember. It was white and you had this big collar.
It was the only dress I would agree to wear. It was a Laura Ashley dress that my daughter later found when she was about that same age and put it on, and it is freaky how similar she looks to me. But it was really cool because Sigourney made sure I was sitting next to her. I actually have never seen the scene where I died because Sigourney covered my eyes the whole time. And it was cool because like I went there and I then knew these movie stars. I was like, oh, that's look at, oh yeah. You know, I was all excited. And then when I came, and it was a trip because I got to walk down the red carpet, which was not anything I appreciated at 9 years old, but in high school I definitely did, you know, going back and bragging to my friends. And then when I came out, there was a bunch of people yelling my name. Well, I had a bunch of friends that went to university down in LA, so I figured it was just them and they'd come or whatever. And then they wanted my autograph. I was like, what? This is so cool, you know? So, I mean, as much as it kind of sucked, the guy wasn't in it, at the end of the day, I mean, I still have the cool perks of being in Aliens, and if you're gonna be in any movie, it was definitely one of the right ones to be in, so.
Okay, we'll take one last question. We'll go over here.
So I kind of wanted to steal the father-son question from the last panel. Can you tell us the story of how you got into the project, where you were at in life at that point, how much it meant to you, like what you were going through, that kind of stuff?
Is it general or?
The question is basically when you were filming when you were in the roles of the film, what were you, I guess, experiencing in your own personal life?
No, was it how we got the part?
I got the part. What were you doing when you were auditioning?
Yeah, how you got the role and where you're at in life at that point, how much it meant to you.
So how you got the role, what it meant to you, and where were you in your life at that point?
All of us? Is it
Yeah,
all-
here, okay, I'll start. So mine was like this kind of freak thing that happened that every actor or actress trying to break into Hollywood kind of wishes it was like their big moment. I was living in England at Lincoln Heath Air Force Base with my parents, and I guess they could not find what they were looking for in America. So they decided to go to American Air Force and Army bases, and they went around taking pictures of all the girls, which now, as a teacher, that would be incredibly creepy, but I thought absolutely nothing about it. And I didn't even tell my parents when I went home. And normally where we went, we could eat lunch off of school campus. You could walk home because if you lived close. So I always went home. My mom just happened to not be home that day. So all the stars aligned and I was there and they took my picture. Then they went to the school nurse because I guess she had everyone's information, and they kept going back to my picture and they're like, James Cameron's really interested in this girl, what can you tell her about me? Well, fortunately I got bored in class, so I went to the nurse's office a lot, so she knew me very well, but my dad worked at the hospital, so she called my dad and she's like, hey, this is what's going on, just to kind of give you a heads up, they're probably going to be calling you. So my dad came home and he's like, did someone take your picture? So this is the whole conversation. And then they just, do you want to try out? What do you want to do? So I was like, I've never been in a movie, so sure, okay. So we went and tried out for it at my school a lot, and then they kept going back, and then it was between me and about 8 other girls at my school, and then there was a couple girls in the States. So they took all of us to London, and again, not something that would probably happen now, but they dropped all the girls off at Pinewood Studios and sent all the parents on the bus to tour London. And then they just did like exercises with us and readings and things like that. And then they called up and told me that it was between myself and a girl in the States. And that Sigourney was flying over on Concorde. And I was so excited because I just watched Ghostbusters. And so I went out and bought myself a little autograph book, and I was like all ready to go. And she was flying over on Concorde, which at that time in the 80s was like, whew, if you knew anyone who flew on Concorde, that was pretty amazing. So I showed up and we ran through everything, and I was asking her for her autograph, and she was like obsessed with my Velcro shoes, like kept wanting to take them off because we were doing the med lab scene. And then, you know, off we went, and then a few days later they called and said that I had the part. It was pretty incredible experience that happened. I'm incredibly lucky that it happened. I don't know, I mean, I had no clue at the time of what I was getting into. I thought it was like a really little small part. I had no clue. I mean, I really didn't realize. I saw Jennette. I was pregnant with my daughter, and we were at some screening in LA, and I was like, this is a trip. And this was like, my daughter's 15. I was like, this is a trip. Why are they still having screenings for aliens? And she's like, Carrie, it's a thing. And I was like, what? And she started telling me about conventions. I was like, okay. And then about a year later, I was invited to one. So I really didn't know that like aliens was, because I live in the middle of California. I'm, you know, small town. Nobody's too impressed with me there. And so I just had no clue until we had talked that it was as big as it was, and the impact it has on people. And like for me, being a military brat, I think the biggest thing that I hear that like means a lot to me is so many people before they were deployed in the Marines, they tell me that they watched aliens, and like that means I know what it's like to be deployed and for families and that, and it means, you know, really big thing to me that I can do something to help people who are fighting for our country and our freedom. So I don't know.
Oh, sure, I'll go. Okay, so my first interview was at 20th Century Fox, and I went and read Reporter Ripley. And I happened to be going, because I used to backpack and I used to work as a waitress and save my money, and I would go over to England. But I said to my agent, if you're still casting that part of alien, because I'm British actually, so I would like to go in. And so again, I went in and met with Ridley and for the part of Ripley. And I don't know whether it was a quota thing or not, because you needed in those days to have British and American actors, and they had to be equally played out. And I had an American accent, so I got the part. I go over, and they call me and tell me that I'm going in for Lambert's wardrobe. I said, oh no, I'm playing Ripley. And they said, no. I said, well, I think so. So I called my agent. I said, aren't I playing Ripley? And he said, yes. And they said, no, you're Lambert. I said, I haven't even read that part of sort of the script or absorbed it. I said, no, she does this cry. So I thought, well, but what am I going to do? So I ended up being Lambert, and I just, I refused to make her a crybaby. So if you think about it, she's actually the voice of the audience, and she's the only one who makes any sense whatsoever. So yeah, okay. Yeah. So Tom.
Sì, va bene. Molto alleato di fare la sua conoscenza a tutti. Okay, the real quick one. Mine is just, people ask what it's like to have, somebody like Ridley, how's he direct? I find that fascinating. As directors rarely ever say anything to an actor about how to approach it. Actors are hired because they really generally fit the role enough that they can come up with something. In any case, Ridley was he was running the camera. He was lighting it. He was doing a lot of what we saw in the original film, the lighting, everything about it, including the depth of field that he had in the background. You saw a lot of smoke going on. He was the first one to do that, so he had a sense of three-dimensional vision. And we did our first breakfast scene. We rehearsed it and then shot it. and he had his eye to the piece like this. I thought it was going to get stuck in there, right? So of course. And then finally we finished that scene, and he pulls back. Interesting. That was all the direction we ever had. I know it's an understatement, but that's the way it works. Is take it all in, come out with what digest, how it digests. And I just thought he was remarkable, that he was such a visionary, that he didn't have much more to tell the actors other than interesting.
So, actually, there was the same kind of quota when we did Aliens, where they were filming it in England, so you had to see so many American actors who had British equity cards in order for the quota.
Right.
Same thing, and that's how they found me. They were looking for is it North American for a film called Aliens, and must have British equity card. And so I thought for 1 second, hey, there was that great film Alien, but no, it's like 8 years ago now. It must be about when you get your green card in England, it's called your resident alien
Yeah.
card.
We were
Yeah.
all,
Your resident alien. So I thought, oh, maybe it's a story about the underground market and immigration. I didn't have an agent. I just got and so I showed up, and finally they told me what it was about. It was Gail, and I was dressed completely inappropriately. My hair was beautiful. I had my long hair and a little light bit of makeup, and they said it's about Marines, and I thought, oh crap, I got so they said, well, here, the role that we're considering you for, there's smaller roles, there's not that many lines, so we're going to give you this role called Vasquez. You're not reading for her, we're casting her in the States. We just want to hear how you read. So I, worked on it, and I was like, how do you work on something and not as the person? It just seemed kind of crazy, so I thought, well, I'm just going to, do it as her, whatever. So I came in and I read as her, and then it was Gail and her, and she said, do you have time to go for lunch do you have to be back? I said, no. She said, okay, well, I'm going to give you another role. The name is Hudson. You're not reading for him either. I was like, okay, so this is very crazy. And it was, want you to just there's a monologue that I want you to you work on, bring it back, and just, I want to see how you read it. So I was like, okay, so this is crazy. So I'm now this character Hudson. I'm not sure who he is, but he's obviously really a hyper dude, And I came back and I read the scene that was in the director's cut where he's kind of pumping up the troops, we got sticks, we got guns, and I read the role of Hudson, played Hudson, and then she was like, thank you, and then I left, and I was couldn't figure out what the hell had just happened and who I was reading for or what was going on or anything. And then I like I said, at that time I was doing little fringe theater around London. And then they called me back, and I met James Cameron. I wasn't quite sure who he was again. I didn't have an agent, so I didn't know it was intel, but he was this young guy who was kind of talking to me and crawling on the floor, and I thought, okay, he's got to be the writer, or I don't know. And we just kind of talked, and again, I was doing Vasquez, and he was talking about the character and all this just stuff, and had a great time, and it was like, okay, great, it was really great to meet you, and I was like, oh, okay, and he asked, kind of about, what's your ethnic background? I said, well, I'm Jewish, I'm Russian and Brazilian, Moroccan, just kind of a mishmash, and he's like, oh, okay, cool. So I left, and then I'm kind of leaving. Mary Selway came back in and was like, can you come back in? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so I came back in and they said, okay, so this is really weird. We want you in the movie. We don't want anyone else to get you. Because people are knocking down my doors right then. And they said, here, we're going to give you the script. Don't show it to anybody. We don't know what part you're going to play. But you're in the movie. And so we'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. And I just kind of left the thing and I was just like, whoa, And then Mary Selway came up to me and she goes, do you have an agent? And I said, I don't. And she said, do you want to do the deal with me, or shall I get you an agent? I was like, yes, please. And I got home to my husband, and I was just like, I'm in a movie. What are you talking about? He's like, who are you playing? I said, I have no idea. It's so crazy. But I'm in a movie. And I got to read the script, and it was it was great. So then I really found out who Vasquez actually was, and I was like, oh man, you know. And then you know, a couple weeks went by, and I got a great call to say, you know, good news, you're playing Vasquez. So that was what I was doing and how I got the film.
Wow.
And I'll skip next, only because I'm going to save Lance for last. But to say that Jennette really was badass. You know, whenever we were working out for the film, Rico Ross, who is vain enough to think that he is God's gift to women, he and I would have pose downs. We shared the dressing room. Jennette always, she crushes. I mean, Jennette had a six-pack. Sure. Anyway, my story is really quick. I was a working actor in England, American. I trained in England as an actor. I just had my son. My son was about a year old and hadn't watched Alien, knew nothing really about aliens. And I was called in to meet Gail Ann Hurd. I just finished a movie called Revolution with Al Pacino and Nastasia Kinski. It's a horrible movie. Don't try it. Horrible. But it was really cool because they said that, you know, I was going to go shoot for 2 weeks, and I was there for 2.5 months. Fantastic, made a whole load of money, and played golf at a local golf course. It was like about $1 to play a round of golf. Oh, down Tiger, down Tiger. So yeah, went to meet Gail, and you know, in the meetings those days, they would ask the proverbial question, so what have you been doing lately? I lied my ass off. I told Gail Ann Hurd that I had the next best role to Al Pacino. I was his brother, and I swear to you, on just tip-tapping, I made up this story for about 20 minutes. She bought it. Next thing I know, I was meeting Jim Cameron. They said, great, called me back one more time, and they said, look, you know, we want you to play the role of Drake under one condition: you have to pump up. So I was like, well, what are you thinking about? I weighed about 180, 185. They said, you have to get up to like 230, 235. So about 4 months before he started shooting, I would be picked up very early in the morning, drive out to Pinewood Studios, and be worked out by this massive Northern Irish farmer, John Lees, who had biceps the size of both my thighs put together. And he worked me to death. We'd work out like 6-7 hours a day, but I also got to go to the Pinewood Studio cafeteria, which, kids, the best. And I had my pick. I'd go, yeah, I'll have a steak, and give me 2 steaks, and about 6 eggs, and yeah, the French toast too, I'll have that. Because they were feeding me this amino acid crap that increased my metabolism and just made me want to eat like crazy. So that's kind of how it happened.
How about you, Lance? How did you get the role?
What?
How did you get the role?
God, I've been listening to all of this and going, holy shit. Did all of that actually happen? I mean, we are like, oh God, there's a trained horse, and then there's an untrained horse. It's a natural horse. I don't know what I am. I came into these things and these movies and stuff, and I went, what the hell? How did I get the part? And then I'm standing there going, I do know how to speak English. I mean, I'll be able to sneak my way past all the BS. Because what the hell do actors do when you think about it? We put ourselves in a vulnerable position, crawl through a pipe, jump off a building, you know, whatever it is. And it's pretty amazing. And these guys are all like great, friendly people. The women, the guys, everybody. And we're all rooting for each other. But then what really goes on is whatever we need you for, you be there at 7 in the morning, right? I mean, really. And then I went, what? Say that again?
I was picked up.
You what?
I was picked up and brought to the.
No, God. And then you fall in love just at the sight of this young actress, and you're going, how's this gonna go? I don't know, man. It's all like gambling. It's a little bit like, yeah, I got some money, I'll put it on that number and see what happens. Right? Do you agree?
I was never in a film, so I had no idea.
Oh, but you had Bill Pax and you had, we're all struggling to find out how good can we be? Can we be good and why? And who's deciding? Well, usually it's like Jim Cameron or somebody, and one of his flunkies maybe would be saying, I don't like that guy Lance that much, you know. And I go, all right, I'll kill you. I will. I'll see you tomorrow and kill you. But it's like it's a dream world, but it's also very practical. It's real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's practical.
But how did you get the part?
We're gonna wrap this up.
Are we having rebellion down that end of the table?
I'm just so confused.
It's okay. You don't have to be.
I'm gonna blame it on the jet lag.
I'm confused right now.
No.
Not as much as me. All right,
No,
everybody.
we all work in our own way.
I think it's time
Yeah, we-
we all go have a drink.
Look at us. Is there a consensus of mentality here? No. Who knows what's going on? I'm here because I like you guys and I like surrendering.
All right, everybody, let's have a big round of applause for Veronica, Tom, Carrie, Jennette, Mark, and Lance. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Hope you had as much fun as we did.